Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. Welcome to part 2 of my series looking at the Atari Collection 1 for the Evercade, Blaze's new handheld for fans of retro and retro style games. I've got another 5 classics to get through this time, so let's get started. Game number 6 in the collection is Crystal Castles. This for me is a prime example of where this collection would have benefited from a better version of this game. Perhaps not the arcade version in this instance because I'm not sure the trackball controls would carry over all that well, but a version from a more powerful system at least. As it stands though, we have the Atari 2600 version, which is ugly to look at to say the least. If you can look past this though, the game is still fun to play, and is easier to progress in than the arcade version due to being slower by necessity. I was able to control Bentley Bear fairly easily and get a lot further than I was expecting to. The game plays a bit like Pac-Man or one of its clones, except the action is now from an isometric perspective. Your objective is to collect up all of the dots which represent crystals, moving on to the next stage when you do. There are a variety of enemies out to stop you, including evil walking trees. Some stages have hidden warps that will jump you ahead a few levels. There is a fair bit of sprite flicker, especially with the enemies, because the 2600 can't have too many things on the screen at the same time. As I said, it's fun, but the game deserves better. I'm going to give it a score of 3 out of 5. After that we have Centipede for the 2600. While you could say the same thing about Centipede, that a version from a more powerful system would be better, I found that for this game it doesn't really matter too much. You can still tell what everything is supposed to be and the game plays well. It is of course a port of their classic arcade game, where you go up against the titular Centipede as well as spiders, fleas and other types of bug. Centipede does take a fair amount of practice to get used to before you start getting proficient at it, at least in my experience. It's a very fast moving game, and if you are unlucky and have a bad mushroom configuration, the Centipede may end up zooming straight for you. It can be quite stressful to play because you'll often have to dodge spiders, clear out extra mushrooms and destroy the Centipede before it gets down to the bottom. Don't forget that you can move your cursor up the screen though, so if anything does get to the bottom row, it is possible to dodge out of the way and recover. Centipede has never been one of my favourite games, mainly because I've never been especially good at it, but this is a solid version. I'm going to give it a score of 3.5 out of 5. Up next is Double Dunk, which is a 2-on-2 basketball game. I was honestly expecting this one to be atrocious, but after spending a bit of time with it, it is actually fairly playable. It uses half-court rules, whereby if one team manages to steal or intercept the ball, then they need to clear it by taking it beyond the 3-point line, or else it will be a foul. To get full enjoyment out of this game though, you really need to be able to play it against another human being, because the computer opponent is just too good and will whoop you easily. That's the one thing that the Evercade is incapable of doing at the moment, because there is no way to connect a second controller to it. Apparently Blaze are thinking about releasing a home console style version of the Evercade, where you can connect extra controllers and enjoy a bit of multiplayer, but for now that aspect is off the table. That does rather hamper this game and any others that are multiplayer focused. In its current state, I will give Double Dunk a score of 2 out of 5, and perhaps I will increase that in the future if the console is actually released. The penultimate game for this episode is the 2600 version of Desert Falcon, and I do really think that this is a poor version of the game, especially when held up next to the 7800 version, which is included in Atari Collection 2. It is ugly to look at and the gameplay suffers as well. Anyway, you control a falcon who can either walk along the ground or take flight. You are much more manoeuvrable in the air, but you will need to land in order to collect items such as the hieroglyphs. Picking up 3 of these will give you various powers, all of which are detailed in the manual that originally came with the game. I would really recommend reading this if you have any hope of understanding this game. You can find it on the website called Evercade Info Central at evercade.info. I'm not really a fan of retro games where you need to go off and read a manual to understand them though, especially for a console. They should be intuitive enough to pick up on their own. I really didn't like Desert Falcon. Maybe the 7800 version will be better. I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know. In any case, I'm giving the 2600 version a score of 1.5 out of 5. Our final game for this part is the 7800 version of Food Fight, and boy is this game fun. The idea is to get your character from the starting point on the right of the screen over to the ice cream cone before it is completely melted. The quicker you get there, the more bonus points you get. There are a bunch of angry chefs in your way trying to stop you though, so you have to collect various items of food from the piles scattered around the stages, and then chuck them at the chefs. There are bananas, tomatoes, peas, and a bunch of other types of food to hurl at the bad guys. If you get hit by food or touched by a chef, then you are immediately pelted with loads of food, which is always amusing to watch. While there is an arcade version of Food Fight, which is slightly better than this one, the 7800 version is still great. I'm going to give it the same score as Alien Brigade, which is 4.5 out of 5, as I think these two games are the shining gems in this collection. That concludes part 2, but there are still 2 more parts and 10 more games to come. Join me again for the next part soon, and in the meantime, take care.